our strongest men standing up and have been standing up since the very beginning. I met both of them about 4 years ago at the protests in Toronto. So it's always good to share a stage with them. We met Nelson Thal, and I am embarrassed to say, as I think it was Chris, that we didn't know who Nelson Thal was, but it turns out he's been speaking truth longer than any of us. He was speaking truth like 20, 40 years ago, and not just truth on alternative or authentic media, but he was actually speaking truth on legacy media, and his family actually is major shareholders in the Toronto Star. And he joined us telling us his story and telling us some of what he was accused of years ago as conspiracy theories. He let us in on his story, which was really amazing. I got to reconnect with Damian Spalding. I love that man. He used to help us out, back in 2020 and 2021 with the rallies and events that we were hosting. He is a musical genius. He owns Spalding Music School of Arts. And so it was great to be able to work with him again and reconnect. But oh my gosh, and we brought in people from, the West Coast, from Alberta and BC. Phil Primo from Prime Gold Media was with us, and James and Marcella from Stand United BC joined us. And of course, like I said, we did have technical difficulties. It's always crazy.
Well, we didn't. Our stuff
but Ed Jamnisek from the Freedom Report, the Kevin J.J. Johnston show, he was running the technicals for bringing in guests remotely. And as we tested the system an hour or so before we went live, and everything was working. We had perfect sound. The people were visible on the screen. They could hear us. We could hear them. And then we go live. We go to pull in Phil Primo from Prime Gold Media, and lo and behold, the system crashes. It won't work. He can't hear us. We can't hear him. We can't see him on the projector. It took us an hour to get that back up and running again. It was crazy. And it did that all day Sunday.
Despite all that stuff, I think it was a success. We had a lot of great people talk, and the theme was how to change the world. And people brought their A game. I'm going to say they brought a lot of great solutions. We had a medical panel on Saturday night. And there was some really great stuff brought up that I actually hadn't heard before. And usually when it comes to medical panels, we have been so invested in COVID and the medical stuff that I go into defensive coma at these conferences because I just, sorry, Hesham. I was beginning to think there was no show tonight. I was almost on the same page with you, but I'm a little out of breath, but we made it happen. So that was really good. And then we had the media panel, which was amazing. Because 2 out of the 3, and then eventually 4 were incredible media panelists.
Right. We had Lamont Daigle from TIPS. Ed Jamnisek eventually got to join us from the Freedom Report. Phil Primo from Prime Gold Media. Chris and myself, and Richard Allen, who is a freelance multimedia producer. And then Stand United BC, because we were so late getting Phil to join us, they joined us on the media.
Anyway, points of view on the media that we hadn't thought about. Some incredible stuff. So that is the How to Change the World conference, day 1, day 2. Day 1, the audio, I'm going to admit, is not that great. We did the best we could, and we solved it on the next day. And then, so lots of great stuff. And that Nelson Thal interview is really good.
Amazing.
And the legal panel that we did at the end of the day on Saturday is also really good. Sunday, day 2 was really good.
Day 2 was jam-packed. But we had Daniel Freiheit, who was on the show, Vincent Gertzi, and Chris Weisdorf. So we had 3 very different legal opinions, one from a lawyer, one from a retired police officer, and then one from someone who just knows how to research really, really well and has been helping people with no legal training. Chris Weisdorf.
Canada's sweetheart right now.
Exactly. And we've had all 3 of them on our show. So it was really nice to be able to moderate a panel with them. So it was a jam-packed weekend. We are completely exhausted. And but it was good to reconnect. talk to people again. And like I said, some really great information came out of that, and some really great solutions on how to change the world. We do have it up on our Rumble channel. And is it on TFM Report?
No, it's not on our website, but it's on our Rumble channel. So you go back to our past episodes and it's like second or third down. So you'll be able to find that, and no problem. And then also we should probably tell people that we have a newsletter, because we haven't mentioned their newsletter in a long time. So, the stories that we pick for the show, that's 1 in 10 stories that we've decided to amass all these stories, and we do a newsletter once a week. Go sign up for that newsletter, because you are going to be caught up on all the news that you missed every single week, all the news that's not really hitting the mainstream, and then some of the mainstream stuff as well.
Exactly. But if you don't sign up for the newsletter, we can't send it to you. That's how it is set up. So you have to go to our website and sign up for the newsletter, and then you'll get it. It typically goes out on Sundays. However, when we're at events, it doesn't get out till Mondays. And on the long weekends, we take that time off. So so the next newsletter is usually like overpacked with stuff. But that's okay, because news is good, and pick the stories you want.
That's right. Put your face to the fire hose. Yes, that's right. Yes, it was. Here we are reading it quietly. Reminded me of the Worldwide Rally and protests being similar faces speaking. It shades of Worldwide Rally, because there was a lot of old faces that came out.
Sarah Chuchinian was there, and Dr. Mark Trozzi came in remotely.
Old faces, new knowledge, though.
That's right. And Dr. Chris Shoemaker. So a lot of people that we've actually had on our show were guests on the stage or came in remotely. It was fantastic. It was like as Hesham said, reminding you of the old worldwide rallies, or for us, like a class reunion.
Yeah. And I'm wearing my Bad Mother Trucker shirt. I already show that.
Compliments of Desi Ranks.
Desi Ranks, and we're going to have Desi Ranks on the show soon, and we're working on a little bit of a surprise for everybody. And you know what? I forgot. We were given something really great at the conference. This, now kind of a friend gave up a gift to us with a card. So this is Bob and Doug McKenzie, if you don't know, from the Great White North, the original podcasters back in the day from SCTV, and we're paying homage to Canada and to the original podcasters. But we were given a little tiny diesel can that we were going to put up, and I totally forgot. I barely remembered my own equipment for podcasting, so forgive us on that, but that'll be added to the set.
Yes, thank you, Laura, for joining us and leaving us with a little gift to remind us of amazing God handshaken days.
Right, but you're not here to see us indulge in our emotions. You're here to see us talk about the new economy. That's our show tonight. So we got lots of different little things. It's funny, because we were putting different stories together, and then we realized that all of these stories actually fit together in a certain way, and they're breadcrumbs to bigger clues as to what's going on. And we're learning as we go. So this is one of those learn as we go situations. You'll learn with us as we're learning that here are some of the crafty things that they're going to be doing with our economy. So they're changing things around. Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, unannounced yet, his big thing is retooling, repiping, rewiring, replumbing. These are all the terms that he uses, the economy. And I found one interview that we're going to do a whole show on Mark Carney, and one interview where he said what it should be is the whole global economy should be based on trade. So basically different countries have commodities, and that's how the global economy is going to actually be positioned, which is totally different than today, right? Not gold, not oil. Kenya has coffee, so that's going to be part of the global economy. And what do we have now? They've gotten rid of everything. So
I was going to say, they've shut us down on oil. They've
maple syrup, you buggers. That's what we do. That is what we do. And beer, and
maple syrup, beer, water. We are one of the world's largest resources for water. Yeah, drinkable water, fresh water.
So the money will be backed now by different commodities, because different countries, and that's a way to even out the different countries and get them on par, because they need them all fairly even so they can control it fairly evenly. So that's the thing. They need it all under one system, and they can't do that if there's different economies going on in the world. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So, where do you want to begin?
Well, let's begin here because this is where people have got their eyes. So this is a great place to start.
Okay.
Alberta now introduces permanent residency path for police officers. Foreigners interested in becoming police officers will soon be able to immigrate to Alberta and become permanent residents. Alberta's provincial nominee program has introduced a new pathway to permanent residency for foreign nationals aspiring to work as police officers in the province. So,
what does that mean for all of us natural born Canadians? More immigration, that's what it means, and less jobs for Canadians because they're looking for immigrant police officers.
Right. Now, we're not against immigration per se, but we are against fast immigration with the intent of destroying the economy when it's going way faster than the infrastructure that's being built for it. Housing crisis, food crisis, and then job crisis is happening because the government is paying or subsidizing wages for immigrants to come in and work. So they're undercutting their own people. Now, I mean, this started with free trade, really, a long time ago. This started with free trade. And what we used to do before, was it World War I? Help me out here. We introduced the federal income tax in World War I as a war measure, temporary war measure, and how we got roads built and how we got the federal budget paid for basically was on tariffs. So we charged companies to come here and do business in Canada, and then we got away with that. We did away with that, and we moved to free trade, which meant the tax burden became ours. Right. So now you look at foreign workers brought in and the government is subsidizing them. They're paying for housing, which we'll get into. So they're doing what they can to undermine Canadians. This is literally an act of war on Canada, what our government is doing right now. And so then they're bringing in this police force that has no allegiance to Canada and no allegiance to the Canadian people. And they couldn't care less if they pull out a gun on you or not.
Exactly. But not only that, Alberta is showing the largest interprovincial growth.
Yes.
They had over 42,000 people immigrate, whatever you want to call it, into Alberta. And of that, I think 13,000 were from other provinces and 30,000 were immigrants that came into Alberta. Now, they're saying we have this massive shortage, we don't have enough police, and we've got this massive population that has happened literally within a year. We need to deal with it by hiring extra police. But what they're not saying is they're in a police force crisis because much like the rest of Canada, if you weren't vaccinated, you lost your job. And if you're unvaccinated, you didn't get your job back. So they are hiring now immigrants, nothing about vaccines, instead of the Canadian officers that they actually let go. Or maybe the work environment was so bad when unvaccinated officers were allowed to slowly come back in that maybe those officers had to leave the job again due to the abuse and the assaults that they faced coming in, and the chiefs did nothing to stop it. Perhaps that's why there is a shortage of police, and not necessarily due to the 42,000 people that have now crashed the Alberta borders.
Right. Now, remember, when we say, when we speculate on what the government's doing, it's not any one thing. There's got to be 4 or 5 outcomes for them to make it worthwhile. One of the other things they're doing is they're bringing immigrants, and I revealed this knowledge at the conference on Sunday, that when new immigrants come in, and it's also like homeless people here in Canada, but when new immigrants come in, they're passed from department to department. And sometimes their names are spelled wrong, or sometimes it's Muhammad Ali or Ali Muhammad, which is, I guess, the most famous Muhammad that came to my mind. And so every time they get passed off, they get a new identity. Yeah. So new identities are created. And sometimes there's 4 and 5 identities created for one person. And this is going on en masse. It is not a secret within the government. It is a well-known fact that this is happening on a daily basis. So immigrants are causing false identities to come in. So they want to fast track these immigrants as much as humanly possible, because we think they're using that for voter fraud. And so they're creating false voter banks out of these false IDs. And they want to bring in as much of this as possible before voting happens, supposedly in 2025, if it happens.
And we know from our dear friends Randy Barber and Kim Wittern down at the New York audit that is how that is how they discovered the voter banks that were being created down in the U.S., creating numerous voting registrations under false names. Right. And we now know that's what they're doing here in Canada, but they're doing it using our healthcare system. And we did ask a politician if he knew this was happening, and he said, yep. And then he left it at that.
We just talked to somebody else who works in the government, and we said, you know this is happening? Oh, yeah, everyone knows that. So the government is creating false identities on a daily basis, and they all know it's happening, and they just haven't talked about it. So could that potentially be used to create a false voter bank? Sure they could, because you remember in 2021, I think it was, they made it so that people didn't actually have to go into the naturalization and immigration office to get naturalized. They didn't have to take the oath in person. They could just do it all online now.
Click. And done.
They're supposed to record a video, but videos can be faked now. We've seen how AI fakes video stuff. So they don't even have to have a real person anymore.
That's it. And, I saw a thing on social media today. I think it was Harrison Faulkner, actually. He was interviewing all of these immigrants in a Mississauga park, asking them about immigration and whatnot, and did they see a problem with it? And he brought up the question, why do you think that our opposition party in Parliament is not talking about immigration, namely Pierre Poilievre? And perhaps this is why, because they all know at the end of the day, the more immigrants that come in, the more they can pad their voter banks. So they don't want to talk about immigration. They don't want to talk about the problems that immigration brings forward, such as, housing shortages and food shortages and resource shortages. Because at the end of the day, it pads their banks, their voter banks, which keep them in their jobs.
Right. And if you think that we're kind of coming down on liberals, conservatives do it, liberals do it, Republicans do it, Democrats do it. They've been doing it for decades. So it's not a new thing. Creating false voters is not a new thing. It's basically a way of taking out these voter names so they can make them vote whichever the way they want, because there's a certain amount of power and control in keeping who they want in power. So it's not a partisan issue. It's just widespread everywhere, and we need to start educating people. That's pretty hard to combat. That's the mail-in ballots, and that's pretty hard to prove and combat. But there are some things we can do. They want to extend voting days now. They want voting days to go to 3 days. Well, look how much they can sneak in those 3 days. That is absolutely one way they want to cheat.
But not only that, they already have early voting. So they've already got 7 to 10 days of early voting. Now they want to add election day being days, add 3 more days for that. Well, who's looking after those boxes in between?
Right. You don't have scrutineers. You have scrutineers for the however many 12 hours it's open, but you can't get them for like 3 days in a row. Right. Number 2, they want people to be able to go from polling station to polling station. And now, you have people with 3 and 4 and 5 IDs. So then now they can go to all these different polling stations. And another way they can cheat.
Exactly. But not only that, I was reading an article about the polling stations, and I watched a news broadcast about the election. And apparently, we all get our election cards that say register, and you log in, you register, or you call and you register, and it tells you which station to go to. However, in Canada, it's not mandatory that you only go to that station. So what they found was that people were voting several times throughout the day because they would go to the voting station they were assigned to, but then they would go to other voting stations, not what they were assigned to, and they would give their name and say, I didn't get a voter registration, or I didn't register my vote. Oh, I didn't realize I needed to bring ID. And guess what? in Canada, as long as you show up, you're allowed to vote. So one person potentially could vote 5, 6, 7 times, as many times as he could get to polling stations in one day.
Right.
Or he could vote early and then show up every day and vote again and again and again, just not at his own polling station and not at the same polling station. Right. So there you go. That's another way they cheat.
Another way they cheat. So one way that we can combat that is we start educating people. What we really want is one day, one vote. ID at voting. That's it. No more mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
Those are the ways. Those needed. Those are automatically calculated. We don't have the Dominion voting machines, but we have voting tabulators, and those are sketchy. We had a problem with the last conservative leadership election. No, the one with O'Toole where he won, there was some sketch with their tabulator.
Oh yeah.
So we need those to happen. And you're saying, well, what about shut-ins? Well, it doesn't matter. You can go to the shut-in station. You can go to the nursing homes and you can go to the hospitals. They used to have this all the time.
Exactly.
The only thing that was allowed outside of the voting day was absentee. Like if you're overseas, you're allowed to actually vote by proxy, go in and send your votes in. And that was largely military and whatnot. Now I think they've actually reversed that, where they vote on the base. But anyway, so that what we need, one of the ways we can combat that is if you are a big mean person or a little mean person, if you're like a little bundle of dynamite and you won't take no for an answer and you're not afraid of a big surly man, we need scrutineers. So you need to register as a scrutineer. You need to find an independent and say, I want to be your scrutineer. And you need to go in, and we need tough people, like biker tough people. We've had reports, the last 2 voting days, we've had people come in and say, they went in and they said, my candidate, particularly in this case, PPC, wasn't on the ballot. And they go out and they leave and they cry because their PPC voter wasn't on the ballot. You should be shutting that polling station down immediately and saying this needs to stop until this person is on the ballot. You don't go away and cry. You go in there and you shut it down and like threaten to burn it down if they don't stop all voting until all ballots. I mean, like I'm not kidding here. Their democracy is the only thing that we've got. It's the only voice that we have outside of taking your money out of the banks and stop paying taxes. Vote with your money. But this is a serious issue here. And you can't let people run over your democracy. So if they're not in a ballot, say, like, I will literally call the cops and make a scene, and I will kick over every ballot box unless you guys make this right immediately. The other thing we heard is that the scrutineers in one riding were not allowed to go into the room where the tickets were. There was big windows
where they were actually counting.
So they locked the door and they could watch from the windows, and that was scrutineers. And then they eventually put a curtain up over the windows. That's where you kick that door down and you tell this guy that if you get in the way again, you're going to be leaving in an ambulance. We need people that tough. We need scrutineers are like soldiers, like warriors, because they can't let this happen.
Exactly.
And so if that's you, if you're feeling a calling on that, then connect with us, because we're going to connect you with CDDA. We're going to have CDDA start to organize these scrutineers, because we cannot let cheating happen this time. Voting's coming fast. Maybe, unless they have something big planned with Mark Carney.
Which we think they probably do. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you need to contact your MP, your MPPs, push for one-day voting, election day, which is what it always used to be. One day, a lot harder to cheat if they only got one day to do it, and be a scrutineer and be demanding, know your rights, and don't let some little pill popper sit there and tell you you're not allowed to watch the vote, you're not allowed to watch the count, and exclude you out. No, your job is to make sure the election stays true. So that's what we need to do. Contact your MPs. Don't let them push the election out. Make it go back to the original date that it's supposed to be, so that all those MPs who are worried about their pensions not coming true, that's why they're pushing the vote out. make them work for their pension. They want their pension. They need to start doing their job. So contact each and every one of them, push that agenda. One day voting, back to the original date. And if you want your pension, you work for it like everybody else in Canada.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's super important, and we need to get back to that for sure.
Sorry, Senior Canuck, we don't mean to stress you out again.
See, this is that's the thing. We kind of say this stuff, but knowledge is power. You know, now we've got the knowledge. Now we can do something with this. And just for the record, this isn't our opinion. This is us interviewing people on the inside. So we've got inside information. Came to us accidentally, but we've got it. Now we're going to do something with it.
Exactly.
So, so what else do we got? Oh, well, let's just stay on the immigration train. Feds are consider buying houses to hotels
to house an influx of asylum seekers. Immigration Minister Mark Miller said that Ottawa is toying with the idea of buying up hotels to house the exponential influx of asylum seekers coming to Canada. The rationale behind the decision to save money on the cost of the block booking hotel rooms, which is how the Trudeau government is currently dealing with the situation.
Wow.
Did you?
That one. That was good.
Yeah. So there are many different spots that they have hotels that they block off rooms so that the government can pay for asylum seekers to come to Canada. Do you know over 400,000 asylum seekers came to Canada, and your tax dollars are paying for them to stay in a hotel room? You know, the hotel that you can't afford to take a vacation in, or when you call in Niagara Falls to book a hotel room, you can't get one. It's because asylum seekers are sitting in those hotel rooms. And now the government's going to buy up all these hotel rooms because, hey, why not? We'll save the taxpayers money. We'll just buy homes for all the asylum seekers. Oh, screw the vets who are homeless on the streets. Screw all the Canadians that have lived here their entire lives and are living on the streets. Screw the nurse who's living in her van because she can't afford rent anywhere. Screw the single mother who works at the bank as a bank manager and can't afford an apartment. Hence, she's living in shelter to shelter to shelter. Screw all those people.
Right. It's one big tax-funded orgy.
Let's just pay for asylum seekers coming into Canada. Not only are we going to set them up in hotels, we're going to give them cell phones. We're going to give them credit cards, and we're going to give them $2,000 a month cash.
I think it's more
just for coming. But you vets who risked your lives to protect Canada, screw you. You only get $1,200 a month if you're lucky, and we're not going to make sure you have a home. You can sleep in a box on the street.
Right, you know, and there, I don't know, you're probably paying $16,500 for those now. So that's not even like, sometimes they want you to see this stuff. Sometimes it's a misdirect. You know, I find it very concerning the government's doing this grab of private property as well now. Now there's government-owned hotels and there's government-owned private property. We know that the simple solution is just stop the fire hose right now and just stop with all kinds of immigration. It seems like everybody's seeking asylum right now. Yeah. So
even the immigrants that have come to our country legally that Harrison Faulkner interviewed, everyone he interviewed were immigrants, every single one of them. And even they said the immigration needs to stop, letting in so many. And Canada apparently is the top place for asylum seekers. And because they're getting the word back out to their home folks, those home folks are now coming here instead of other countries next door to them.
Right.
But even those immigrants that Harrison Faulkner interviewed said, enough. We are in big trouble as Canada. We are losing not only jobs and housing and food, but we are losing our identity.
Right. And so on top of that, so you've got all this economic problems caused by our own government, act of war. And then on top of that, these people get money. Where does it go? They send
Not
it back
here.
home. They send it back home. So it's not coming back into the economy. At least it's not even re-stimulating our own economy.
Yeah.
Like a lot of it goes right back to their own country. So they're just sucking money out of our country like crazy.
Even the immigrant workers. And I know we live in a very rural area. A lot of the farmers bring in migrant workers. That money that those migrant workers doesn't get spent here. They send it all back home. So there's all these jobs that are being taken up by migrants.
Paid for, subsidized by the government.
But it doesn't stay here to stimulate our economy.
No.
It doesn't stay here to create more jobs. It doesn't stay here to pay for more housing. It goes back home to their country, Jamaica, Mexico, Costa Rica, wherever it is that they're from. That's where that money goes back to. It doesn't stay here.
So the government needs ways to stimulate the economy again. And they announced this capital gains tax, and they say it's coming. They haven't voted on it. And what happens? People are like, well, I don't want to pay extra. Right now they're paying 50%. I don't want to pay 65% on my capital gain. So they're selling their stuff. What's happening? They're injecting the economy with that based on a false. So far, it hasn't been voted on. So far, it's not a law.
Yeah, they didn't vote.
They're starting to do it without even being voted on.
Yeah, they didn't vote the budget in yet. It's still going through readings in the House. It hasn't received royal assent. So people, they made it effective as of June 25th, 2024. So something has been implemented and become effective before the House has actually gone through the process of voting it in. And now they're on summer break. So all these people are, before June 25th, tried to proactively save 17% of their income or their assets that they earn through investments or cottages or whatever. So they cashed out early to try and make sure that they kept that extra 17%. But the House hasn't even voted on it. It's not going to get voted on till probably September or October when they come back into session after summer break. So this is, again, another false way for the government to stimulate their coffers and take from your coffers.
So they suckered a bunch of people into stimulating the economy for them. And then they're going to say, oh, the economy is doing really great. I just never gonna meet these guys. So immigration, we talked about immigration, and now all of a sudden that actually doesn't look so bad. This video came across our feed today. Holy cow. Like this could actually destroy employment in Canada once and for all. If they want to put a nail in the coffin, this is it. And Michael Chuchong, you better sit up and stop eating for half a second. I'm going to come to you after this. There's Toronto in China. China is the guy in China doing VR. Do this work in Toronto. $3.75 an hour. Now, how much of a reality is this? I don't know. But it's plausible.
Well, I've seen many videos where this is exactly what they were doing, documentaries on this from a couple of years ago.
Right.
And it was still in the plan stages and not yet implemented. But here they're showing it as being a very big possibility. We know DigiDogs are already being used in New York State instead of police officers. We know the Walmarts are already using cleaning robots instead of people. The airports are using cleaning robots instead of people.
I'm embarrassed to say we bully those robots like crazy. We stand in their way, and you can actually, when they're going by, their touchscreen is like go home or something like that. You can just pop that screen and they leave and go off like that. But Jody and I were harassing one in an airport in London, and we were just standing in front of it. It's like, oh, please watch your step. And then it would turn around.
Please step aside. Please step aside.
So we were doing that, and we were getting a bookending, and then we finally said, okay, this is, even though it has no feelings, it's getting mean.
Yeah. But we left it alone.
Yeah.
And then we walked to where our gates were, and everybody's sitting and waiting. And there's another lady doing the same thing we were doing earlier.
In this poor robot. Yeah.
So, but yeah, and then
think this robot has feelings. That's because you're crazy.
But then we walk into the Coburg Walmart, and lo and behold, they had a machine there doing the exact same thing. Please step aside. Please step aside. Right. And the workers didn't see anything wrong with it. When I said, that guy just took over somebody's job who got fired to hire this robot. And they...
Did you just misgender that robot? Holy cow.
Maybe I did. Who knows?
So, Michael Chuchong, how plausible is this? You're a tech guy.
I think that's very plausible, but the fact that it's Toronto might be questionable, but that looked pretty legit.
Yeah. I mean, well I know it was a remote worker.
Yeah.
That's the part to verify.
A remote worker for $3.75 instead of paying an LCBO worker $21 an hour to do that very same job. And I know the documentary I watched, the lady was in, say California, and the person that she was operating, and it was about playing a video game, the person she was operating was up in New York. So that's many, many states apart.
Right.
And everything she did with her little virtual and Neuralink stuff on, that lady, all of a sudden her arms started moving and doing it. And that was human to human. So human to robot, no brainer.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that's real.
Yeah, I do too, unfortunately. And here's the thing. We subsidize immigrants to come in. We give them a bunch of money. They set up a store, and then they pay their family back home to do this work for them overnight. Because you know what? That's their daytime. So the store gets restocked. I can tell you that people stayed till midnight at Costco to stock at night, and then we would come in at 4:00 in the morning and start restocking. So that could all be done overnight by Chinese workers at Costco. Absolutely, it could happen.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that has anything to do with the LCBO strike.
I wonder if that's part of it. And then you see Ford today? He's like, yeah, we're going to just give the power over to the grocery stores. Right. So
continue staying on your strike. No worries. August 1st, guys, grocery stores, convenience stores, you can now get coolers and beer and wine. And you can now get the larger boxes, the 30 boxes of beer in grocery stores and convenience stores, compliments of Doug Ford. So LCBO workers who are striking, looks like it doesn't matter. He's going to do this anyway.
Yeah, Doug Ford finally pulling a boss move like his brother would have done, Rob Ford. Yeah, he would have.
Well, that's actually getting two birds stoned at once, literally. It's making it easier for us to stay subservient and dulled, and that's what the liquor is for.
This is true.
Very true.
Right.
More easily accessible. And somehow the LCBO employees that I saw being interviewed kept saying, well, the convenience stores and the Walmart people, and big box stores, because big box stores too, they're not equipped and trained to sell liquor properly. I'm thinking, what do you need to do to be able to sell liquor? Can I see some ID, please? I'm sorry, your face doesn't match the ID here, and the date of birth is completely wrong. Put the beer back. Like, I don't understand how they are specially trained at the LCBO, but there's no way the person at the Walmart can be as trained and as diligent as them. I thought that was pretty funny, because sometimes you see workers working at the LCBO and then going to their second job so that they can pay their rent at Walmart.
Right. Yeah. Good monologue. Okay, so so that's verified by our tech expert, Michael Chuchong. Okay, Michael, I'll let you go back to you were eating there, so we'll bring it back on a bit. So what? Oh, let's bring this up. This is a good little.
We're here with Kristen Megan. She's a military veteran, right?
Yes, I was in the U.S. Air Force for 9 years.
Wow. And you came out and blew the whistle on geoengineering, things that you witnessed were going on. Can you give us the real nutshell?
Absolutely. Basically, I had heard of what many people know as the term chemtrails. And I worked in a job called bioenvironmental engineering. And I thought that was insane. And why would we do something like that? Modify the weather by using hazardous materials in our atmosphere. So, and actually, the process of trying to debunk it or disprove it, I realized it was actually coming right out of my office, as I was one of the people that was approving the chemicals. And it really shook the core of my oath. And I did a lot of sampling, did a lot of investigation, and I blew the whistle and I got out. And I've now used my credentials, my oath, and my powers for good to help people understand it's very real. It's now openly admitted. There are multiple forms of weather modification. I specifically found the one of stratospheric aerosol injection. And collectively around the globe, we have to understand that it is now being admitted because they're saying it's combating climate change. Well, the climate change we need to be worried about is man-made climate engineering, also known as geoengineering.
And when you say you had chemicals being pumped into the air, what kind of chemicals are they putting out that rain down on humanity, basically?
Nanoparticulate metals, like you had different sulfates and barium and strontium. I know it's probably changed over time. I know they use silver iodide for certain things, but these are the odd part of it was the quantities that I saw them coming in, the form that they were coming in. And it's the same type of materials that I was trying to engineer out of the workplace to substitute with safer materials. And when you notice that what's called the safety data sheet, the information about a chemical of what personal protective equipment to wear, how do you dispose of it, how do you pack it to ship it? When key information is missing, I ask questions. And my questions led to demonization, and I knew I found something I shouldn't have.
That's insane. So these metals are basically toxic for the humans, I would presume, or?
Yes, because it also has aluminum. And a lot of people will tell you, well, these things aren't horrible in small quantities. It's not small quantities, because when you are putting things above us, the dissipation rates are dependent on weather and climate, but it's getting into the food, it's getting into the soil. And around the world, these wastewater treatment plants, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, or these toxicants is what they're called, they are not able to filter them out. So if you're growing organic food, are we going to go back to the plexiglass barriers on our plants? I mean, it's horrible. That's why you can ban it anywhere. We've had states in the United States ban it, and that is great to get the ball rolling. But people really need to wake up to it, irrespective of any political party. It's not okay. And you're seeing a huge increase in neurodegenerative issues like Alzheimer's. It's really difficult for people with respiratory issues and asthma. And people are wondering why they have allergies 24/7, 365.
And I liked what you said about that climate change, or the change we experience in weather. Often we can't disconnect that from these geoengineering activities. Do you want to say something more about that? I mean, how do we feel that? Is there proof or so that is definitely coming from that?
Yes, there are places that openly admitted it. Remember Dubai? And then when people got upset, they retracted it, but the can was already opened. And the issue is, I know this sounds silly, but when you watch movies with time change, they say if you do something and something changes, it changes the ripple throughout time. If you are modifying the weather, you are messing with Mother Nature. And meteorology is a very, very thorough study. And I do know a lot of it because of my profession of plotting hazards. But it does not make sense when you are altering nature where things are not naturally supposed to occur. We had massive flooding in California, and we have a system called HARP that is in the United States. And the same people who demonized me 5-10 years ago are now going, wow, because they're finding it's openly admitted in all of our U.S. documents. The U.S. is absolutely not the only country doing it.
Right.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, thank you very much for coming out on that and letting humanity know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
This will fit in just a minute. So chemtrails above the skies. We took pictures from Mexico when we flew from Mexico, and right when we got to the U.S. border, the clouds just immediately changed. They went from fluffy sparse
white
and to yellow and wispy
brown,
and right at the border, and that's because Mexico has outlawed geoengineering.
Or they had at that time. Not sure where they stand on it now with the new president that they just elected, because she is a globalist leader and part of the WEF. So who knows if their skies are still bright blue and their clouds fluffy white, but we know our skies most days, if you wake up early enough, you can still see a bright blue sky and a beautiful sun. But once you start getting around the 10 o'clock or later in the morning, your sky starts to change a little bit color. The clouds are no longer white and fluffy, and you got like a nice little hazy white or yellow or brown hanging over you, or gray.
So Tennessee just recently outlawed geoengineering over top of their skies, and the people immediately started reporting how the skies were blue and the clouds are fluffy, and so it was one thing that people noticed immediately. So this whole thing, they called it chemtrails. Now they call it geoengineering. Bill Gates has come out straight out and said, I just want to block the sun. I find it quite odd that the man who sells vaccines and sells medicine wants to block out vitamin D. No
natural vitamin D. But not only that, the sun does so much for our eyes, for our skin, for our organs inside our body, for our plants and animals that we eat and grow, and for our water. The sun is an integral part of our weather system and creating rain and making things grow. Without the sun, you'll lose all of that. Our systems literally break down, including us.
So geoengineering, blocking the sun, messing with the weather, and then calling it climate change, another act of war. One thing that most people don't know is Bill Gates also owns a patent. He is the guy who patented underwater heating systems. So they go under the ocean, and the ocean is cold on a hot climate, and he heats up the ocean, which causes steam, which causes a front on, so it goes against the cold front. Anyway, basically it's a way of engineering hurricanes.
And how many
tropical coasts,
and how many,
there's no patent for it.
Exactly. And how many species of animals is he killing, and plankton and all of the things that live in our seas and in our oceans with his underwater heating. Like we
did a whole show on it. There's a patent, literally a patent for this thing.
The global predators are just messing with God's creation over and over and over again. And it has nothing to do with us or carbon or manufacturing or pollution. It literally is all the chemicals that they are spraying down on us.
That's right.
The crickets are alive, and so are the ants, but the worms aren't. Where did the worms go?
Worms and bees are dying, and that's bad. So here's how this ties in. We just found this today. You sent this today on our Signal, and there's a few things in this video that we want to bring up.
As cities grow, so do urban water challenges. The urban population worldwide will nearly double by 2050, with serious implications for water demand. It also means more wastewater and pollution, and climate change is intensifying these challenges. Inspired by the circularity of water in
Now, just stop there. They started by saying there's going to be an increase in water demand. One thing they've taken out of the educational system is the water table. And they're literally starting this video with the water table.
Exactly.
If they're not messing with the clouds, and they're not messing with hurricanes, and they're not messing with
the sun,
all that stuff, here's how it works. And they're showing you right here, which they've literally taken out of the educational system. Water evaporates, goes up into the clouds. The sun evaporates the water, goes into the clouds store water, they rain back down on Earth,
fills the lakes and the rivers, and it starts to and feeds all of the plant life, and it starts to process all over again.
This was something we learned when we were kids in grade 3.
I was going to say grade 1, 2, or 3. It's a circular
system. It just keeps renewing itself. So that's why we always have water, and water evaporates from the oceans, and the salt doesn't go up, and then it rains back down and fills the lake water.
And the natural filtering system of the earth, the rocks, the sand, the dirt, it all filters it nice and clean back into the lakes, and then evaporates back up.
They're literally showing you that they're lying right in the beginning of this video.
Nature, we should rethink the urban water cycle to 1. Deliver resilient and inclusive services. 2. design out waste and pollution, and 3. Preserve and regenerate natural systems. To achieve this, we need to plan for climate and non-climate uncertainties, diversify water supply sources, maximize the use of existing infrastructure, and optimize operations. We have to recover resources from water, such as energy and nutrients, and reuse wastewater. We should restore degraded watersheds and recharge aquifers.
I just want you to remember aquifers because that's going to come up later. So recharging the aquifers, what does that mean?
Through the cycle, we need to incorporate nature-based solutions and use renewable energy, manage water demand, and leverage the potential of digitalization. And most importantly, we have to ensure that vulnerable groups are included in all the solutions. The new World Bank report titled Water and Circular Economy and Resilience shows that both low-income and high-income countries can benefit from circular economy by capturing the full value of water. Find out more about this initiative and how the World Bank is helping countries become wiser at worldbank.org/wiser.
So we'll get into the aquifer thing in a bit. But here's the thing, we're bogged down with details. If you pull back, what's the forest through the trees on this thing?
The forest through the trees? Well, they're saying that there's not enough water when we know water replenishes itself if we leave it alone.
Here was my first thought. Why is the World Bank getting involved?
Oh, that too.
Water?
But you didn't see that right at the beginning. You saw that near the end. And I went, oh, here they are, the World Bank, run by the UN, run by the BIS and the IMF. And here they are collecting samples yet again to figure out where the freshest water is, where's the best water for the smallest little bit of elites that they want to keep around.
So the World Bank's job is to provide money and funding for countries that need it. That is what the World Bank, in conjunction with the IMF and the BIS, do. That's what they do. Why are they telling us that they're getting involved with water? That is a breadcrumb that we need to pay a lot of attention to. Remember, Mark Carney's talking about retooling the entire economy based on commodities
and climate change.
Now the World Bank is very concerned about water. Are they going to be using water as a commodity at this point?
We all need water to survive. And if you don't have access to water, or you don't do as they're told, you won't have access to water.
I'm telling you, this is a clue about how things are going. And they're going to use climate change to control a lot of this stuff. They can bring the weather. They can modify the weather. We know they can do all that stuff. They can create fires if they want to. They can create hurricanes if they want to. So that's all not science fiction at this point. So now recharging the aquifer. Let's get into that. We sort of talked about this on the last show with Ed, but I pulled this clip. These guys, we talked about this guy who said they were going to cut the water for farmers in Idaho. And he says, but they rescinded it and they backed off. These guys did a 15-minute video on it. I'm going to play about a minute and a half.
The Idaho Department of Water Resources, and they want us to turn our wells off. And it's not just us. So the Idaho water curtailment is affecting about 500,000 acres of farmland here in Idaho. So the problem is, and why this curtailment is happening, is because down in Twin Falls, there's the Twin Falls Canal Company, and they were getting a little short of water. So in 2015, they came up with an agreement of how much water the well users, the groundwater users could use. So they were short 74,000 acre feet of water. And they were short that in 2021. So from 2015 clear up to 2021, we were putting way more. It was more than double the amount of water we were using. We were putting back in the aquifer. Well, 2021 came along and there was a drought. And that drought caused us to use more than we used the same amount, but because there was less water that year, it was a hot, dry year, we weren't able to put as much back into the aquifer, and that's when they were short. So 74,000 acre feet is essentially 12 and a half days of water in their canal.
So that's what recharging the aquifer means. And that's just one aspect of this video. And like I say, you're learning as we're learning. So what they're doing is they're pulling water from the farmers and filling that aquifer. But in this particular case, they go on to say their proposal was to actually dry out the farms. And they were, if they wanted to keep the watering their farm, they would have to pay, what was it?
$300
$300
per acre.
An acre to do that. And remember, they're saying that this isn't, they're not using someone else's water. They're using their own water.
Well, their own wells
And
on
if
their
they
own
want to
properties.
use their own water, they have to pay a fine for using their water because they're not feeding someone else's water. And that's basically because the company that gets first rights to it is a power company. And he's saying their infrastructure is so outdated. It was built in the early 90s, and they could build steps, and they could have the water build up, and if they could divert it properly, and they're not doing any of that stuff. So these guys have to pay on their own water.
That stuff costs money. So they'll do it on the farmer's back. But at the same time as they're telling the farmers you're not allowed to water your fields, they're allowing the golf courses to water their greens because rich people, the wealthy elites, still like to play golf on lush green grass. So the golf courses were allowed water, but the farmers were not. And is it a lithium battery factory that is right there? It takes a crap ton of water. And ever since that opened up, which I believe was a year or so ago, it uses nonstop water 24/7. And they weren't told that they had to shut off their water. Just the farmers who feed you and me were told to shut off the water.
Right now, so that's going after the farmers. We played a map a while ago, and we just put a link out on our newsletter, which you should sign up for how many food processing plants were destroyed in 21, 22, when we were all focused on other things. It was hundreds in North America, hundreds.
Yeah, over 700 plants.
And so it's causing food prices to go. While they blame Russia, a lot of that, actually, there's a big portion of that because Russia just produces a lot of the nitrogen.
Which was a U.S. issue because they put sanctions on Russia. So really it was the U.S. that caused the shortage of fertilizer and nitrogen for the farmers. And now it is, again, the states that are causing water shortages for the farmers. So none of this has to do with Putin or Ukraine or Iran or Israel or any of that. It's all the U.S. Our own governments are doing this to us.
Which causes food to go up. And everybody knows that, but I don't think we've realized how much. This guy found out.
I just looked through my Walmart history, and I found this Walmart order from 2 years ago for the whole month worth of groceries. 45 items cost $126. A whole month of groceries just for me, basically. But I did notice this reorder all button, and I wanted to see how much it would cost now. Now, this order of 45 items for 1 month would have cost $414. That is 4 times more. How the fuck? How? What?
That's a pretty big jump.
In 2 years. You know, our government keeps trying to tell us, oh, food's only gone up 3.4%. Well, according to his bill, it's gone up over $300. So I think that's a little bit more than 3 or 4%.
And so what is that? Looks like an intentional way to kind of cut our food supply, which is also an act of war. So now here's an odd thing. And we're kind of figuring some stuff out with communications, and we're, broadly looking at the wide scope of communication. Here's an odd thing from CBC. Canada's sleepwalking into a cashless society, consumer advocates warn. Consumer group is urgently calling for on the federal government to follow other jurisdictions in the U.S. and Europe and bring in legislation to stem the slide towards a cashless society. Only 10% of transactions in Canada today are done using cash, according to Carlos Castelblanco, an economist with the group Option Consumatures. There is a need to protect cash right now before more merchants start refusing it. Castelblanco recently told CBC Radio's Ontario Today. A recent online poll of some 1,500 people commissioned by a different group, Payments Canada, found that the majority of respondents, were worried about the prospect of cashless stores and want to maintain the option to use cash, which is free from bank fees, isn't susceptible to privacy breaches, and can be used during internet outages. It's funny because they said about 10%, but we keep talking to store cashiers basically, and we ask them, like, is anybody using cash anymore? And they all are saying
there's been
lots.
An increase of cash users. But not only that, they talk about in this article the privacy breaches. And if you read our newsletter this week, I think there's 2 or 3 articles in there of privacy breaches that this is very much talking about. Internet breaches. Banks, Prudential Financial just had another massive breach. And this is what happens when you use banks, when you use debit cards, when you use credit cards. And most people's information is stolen at the gas pumps. Did you know that? If not at gas pumps, then they're hitting big box stores, the Home Depot. How many times has Home Depot been hit? Massive amount of times. And now they're hitting the banks. So your information is constantly being stolen. And yet our government would like you to believe that digital ID and CBDCs are the way to go because nothing is safer. Well, gosh darn it. You start reading these security breaches and hacks that are going on, and they're even hacking our government now. So if the government can't safeguard your information, how on earth is Convenience K down the road going to safeguard your information?
Right. You know what we need is like some way to pay for things. Like if we could just inject something into our hands or something, would be really convenient.
Yeah. And now they can hack your biometrics.
No,
and then before we know it, we've got 7 Chris Flex instead of 1.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome, world. Okay. So, but the odd part is, why is CBC doing a story on that when CBC is fully invested in the globalist agenda? Why are they pulling back on that? We're seeing the news turn on Trudeau. We're seeing the news turn on Biden all of a sudden. And they were, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Biden has no dementia, and now they're all like, "Oh, we knew he had dementia for a long time now."
Yeah, right? Well, they're even now saying, "Oh, the Democratic Party is going to pull him off the ballot last minute and put somebody else on." They're already talking about who to replace him with.
Right.
Like, so why is the news turning?
Why is the narrative flipping? And I'm saying to Jody, like, something's off with communications right now. We're watching the narrative. And so put that in perspective, Jody and I scan the news all day, every day. We have nothing better to do. We have no life. We just sit there.
We work for you full time and don't receive a paycheck.
Yeah.
What is wrong with us?
That's right. It's a mental deficiency. But there seems to be a weirdness in the news right now. There's a gaping hole in news right at the moment. And I've said to Jody, it feels like when there's a tsunami, the entire beach, just the waves recede and the beach empties out and the water gets sucked back before the tsunami comes. And that's not to spread fear. I'm just saying
something's
it's an odd
going
void
on
in the news these days. There's really not much going on. The best thing that the news has right now, thank God for Jeremy McKenzie and that Rage Tour, the news would have nothing to talk about. It's the whole thing. The whole world's coming apart and spinning off the globe right now because
his comedy tour,
doing a comedy tour. Oh my gosh.
Bring in the police, bring in the military. Oh my gosh, a comedian is coming to town.
Right. Yeah.
Save save our citizens, save our city from this ridiculously funny guy. Oh my gosh, he's gonna laugh us to death.
Right. And you know what? I don't care. I know Jeremy's can be polarizing. I don't care what you think about Jeremy McKenzie. The man is surgical when it comes to combating government propaganda.
He's got his thumb on the pulse of what
guy.
Our government is doing, and he knows because he worked for the government inside and out in the military.
That's why they hate him. He dismantles them very well, and they hate it. The police are sending out police. And also, if you're part of the gay community or you're an immigrant, you are probably a target. So you might want to stay off the streets when Jeremy McKenzie's giant bigotry crowd runs through Ottawa. That was what Ottawa Citizen basically put out there.
Yeah.
Which usually does really great reporting, but Ottawa Citizen, you have embarrassed, you peed your pants on this one. Okay, so yeah, so that is our show. The economy is changing, and it's all due to acts of war from the government, and we need to really start thinking that this is a war on the people. We need to see it what it is. These are acts of war, cutting our supply lines, cutting our food chains, destroying the economy,
our natural resources.
Intentional. These are acts of war, people, and we need to start seeing this for what it is. Our government. We've got an enemy in our own government, and you know who's not talking about it? Poilievre's not talking about this stuff. He does the Mr. X. He didn't. Not once has he come out against the vaccines, a bioweapon.
Nope.
Not once.
None of those people currently sitting in our houses and in our legislators, none of them are talking about this.
Right.
So that is a
well,
huge
Maxime Bernier is coming out to his credit,
but he's not sitting in the House or the legislator. I said those sitting in the House and the legislator, sitting in the House and the legislator. None of them, none of our MPs, none of our MPPs, none of our MLAs, none of them are talking about this. So that is a huge fire alarm going off.
And again, remember what they have is illusion. All these people, this globalist whatever, all they have is illusion. That's it.
And don't get sucked into the calm before the storm, because I know right now things seem normal and things seem fine, and we're gonna go out and barbecue and play at the beach and go to our cottage. I get that, but don't you let your pulse off the or your thumb off the pulse. Sorry, because fall's right around the corner. So I get it. Spend time making memories with your kids and with your family and your loved ones and your colleagues and your friends, but don't let your finger off the pulse of what's going on. While you're out there having a good time and making memories, make sure your pantries are full. Make sure you're writing your MPs when you're at home.
Just be prepared. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, and that's good.
And share that knowledge with your friends and family as you're having a good time.
Final thoughts, Michael Chuchong. Surprise. Final thoughts.
I've noticed the same kind of shift in the mainstream narrative, which makes me believe that the right side is also just the same coin, different side.
Correct.
Yeah, there's something funky going on right now with the narrative, and so we'll be putting our brains together to try and figure out what this weird void means right now. So,
hey, quick question.
Yeah.
I notice on Rumble here, there's this new subscribe and a $sign.
Oh.
I've never seen that before.
Well, everybody should go and hit subscribe and hit that $sign just to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what happens.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Sorry to throw it off track. We are talking about the economy. We are talking about money. So let's talk about that $sign that's currently sitting on Rumble. It's very new. But we want to thank everybody for paying attention, standing up, still participating in events, still standing up for the kids of tomorrow, and still watching and educating yourselves, because knowledge is power. But remember, on top of that, don't forget to look to your creator and ask, what can you do today to help further his agenda?
Sure,
because you are his tools, and he speaks to you if you listen and if you ask.
Right. No strategy of winning works without God involved. Maybe the show can be monetized on Rumble. Well, Hashem, we will let you go find out. How's that?
Yeah, I'm tempted
just
to
kidding,
click
of
this
course.
button and just see what it says. Oh, Jody Ledgerwood, $1. Your rant here. Please select payment card. Remember to enter your rant above.
Oh, that's
The
just
rant will
a
stick for
paid
2
comment.
minutes.
Rant
Oh.
is different, yeah. But I guess it's probably like the YouTube
Right.
subscription where you pay monthly and you get like a special badge. And I think on YouTube you can offer extra content or
Interesting. Yeah.
like if it was a pre-record, that you could make it available early for your subscribers.
So if you're angry with us,
Pay
then,
some money and rant away.
If you're really angry, you can pay to complain. That's, I should say offensive things more often. Hey.
Yeah, it's interesting. Say offensive things more often.
Yeah, maybe we can get one of those remote boat robots to come and make me a sandwich. Hey.
There you.
Also, complaints can be directed to Jody at tfmreport.com.
Hey, you ate both sandwiches today. I didn't even get one.
Well, who made them?
I did.
Good on you. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. We will see you.
See you on Thursday.
Yeah.
Mwah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.